Hey team, coming at you again with no. It keeps starting with that. It's always awful. Hey team, this week we have another gameplay review, this time of a Huntress, rank 19. And before we begin, I will say that in this game, this player does win. They get a 3K, but I think that there are a few things to highlight about this game. So first things first, as usual, we're going to go over perks. You've got Bitter Murmur, Nurse's Calling, Ruin, and Huntress Lullaby. So this is actually a pretty good build for somebody who doesn't really have a whole lot of perks. Bitter Murmur, I think, is a generally good general perk. You know, you get a lot of tracking whenever they finish a generator. So this is good. You've got Nurse's Calling, which is you know, it's quite good on Huntress. Most people would pick it as a meta perk. Ruin, I like Ruin on Huntress. I think most good Huntresses use Pop Goes the Weasel, just due to its reliability and the fact that Ruin is a hex perk and it can be cleansed. So any of your you know, your regression capability goes out the window if it gets broken. And then you've got Huntress Lullaby, which is really the only perk in here that you don't really use at a higher level. But I think at the lower levels it's perfectly acceptable, especially if you don't really have any other alternatives. Alright, let's get into the gameplay. So, as usual, let's go over what you'd want to do in the beginning of a game, especially if you're new. You want to look around, determine where you're on the map, and then find the farthest map, or the farthest generator on the map from where you are, which it would be to your left. Around the cars. Unfortunately, you don't go over there. You kind of peek at your totem and then you go to a generator that is fairly close, which is good because you want to check this far one. But there is somebody here. Now you find a David who is just kind of hiding there, which is good. But however, with this David, if you're this close, you want to pull out a hatchet. Because if you pull out a hatchet and you hit them with the hatchet, the reload, the cooldown time between the hatchet and your regular mouse 1 is quite a bit lower than if you just mouse 1 and then mouse 1 again. So if you get close like this, you always want to throw a hatchet instead of mouse 1. So what you're going to start doing is you're going to start, that's odd, you're going to start trying to throw hatchets. And this is definitely a common mistake that new players make, where they're just throwing hatchets like a Gatling gun, like they're just gonna keep throwing them until they hit, which you end up doing, which is great because you only have one left. But this is generally not what you want to be doing as Huntress, because it is really easy to dodge. Even when you get down to rank 15 or 12, or even you know any of these green ranks, or even like some of the lower yellow ranks, you're just going to get the long range hatchets dodged. So you want to get much closer or squeeze them into places like vaults or pallets to force them to make an action. Now you were going to check this and you end up realizing that there's nobody there because you can't hear it, which is fine. So you want to head back over here because that's where you last saw someone. This is good. You push them off of this generator with Ruin. Chase somebody around. That was a really good shot. A lot of people would cry because it hit kind of around the tree. That was a very unfortunate miss. I don't know how that actually missed, but that's okay. Bitter Murmur goes off. You don't really get to see anything because you're in a chase, and she just kind of vaults at you and dies because you're rank 19. People panic. That's fine. You pretty much did what you needed to do. That loop is generally pretty difficult for Huntress, just due to the size of the rocks. So almost always, once you get later on, you don't really want to chase somebody around there. You just want to break the pallet. Maybe a better Huntress than me would be able to play around that or get a hit before they even drop it. You hear somebody working on a totem, which is good. You catch them after the dead hard, which is surprising but good. This is actually the guy that just recently got unhooked, but you don't really worry about DS at the higher ranks. That's kind of as it should be. Throw this guy up on the hook, and then return to the last place you saw survivors, which should be that back corner. Good, you remember to reload here. So you'll want to be just looking around each generator, like peek at this one, and then you want to go around the circle, which is good. This is a bit of proxy camping, but I think your senses are good in that you did end up finding somebody, probably due to them coming around the circle to go unhook. Yeah, you would not have been able to. Maybe you would have been able to hit them here if you had pulled out a hatchet, but there's a good chance that they could dodge to the left or dodge to the right, and then there's no way to hit them here. So you just wanna go around and catch them that way. Either go around to the right, and generally I would say through the middle is probably your best bet, unless you're trying to zone them off to the left there, which you do. Away from the hook is a good idea. Not necessarily needed, because if you chase them toward the hook, you can get some more pressure and cause the people who are... See, you're doing it again. You're throwing hatchets kind of indiscriminately, and you're not really going to hit anything because this person appears to have a decent head on their shoulders, and they're going to just dodge around objects. Now this guy dies because you're basically on top of him, and he's like, "No, I'm not. My friends aren't saving me, so I'm just gonna kill myself." In checking that, unfortunately, you kind of lose track of the Nia, and she runs off. Or does she? She stays. Makes a horrible mistake of trying to hide in a locker, which is unfortunate for her. I noticed that you save one hatchet a lot. Just as I say that, you throw a hatchet. So yet again, you are missing all this value on Bitter Murmur. Every time a gen is done, you want to generally look around to see where the person that was on the hook goes. But you haven't, which is kind of a newbie mistake, but it's not the worst possible thing that could happen. See, in this case, you go back and forth. They're actually just gone. You see these scratch marks here? They can only have left if there are scratch marks here. So follow them. At this point, I would have just left this Nia, because this whole circle is obnoxious. She made a huge mistake. I don't know what that was. There's no way that you weren't following her, just due to the tier of you know, rank you're in right now. So you hear something moving, a generator moving over here, so you should always check around it because you have a ruin, because if you push somebody off of it, it's going to regress on its own. Yeah, and because you didn't, there was somebody on it, they just go and get a free on hook, and there you go. Returning to the hook is quite strong. Okay, so right here, you see this Nia self-carrying, which is kind of a horrible mistake on her part. I guess it's with a medkit, so it's not all bad. This shell has two options, right? She either goes this way and tries to dodge behind this tree, which puts her in a horrible dead zone, or she goes this way to where you should be able to just throw a hatchet right at this door and she dies, or at least gets a hit. What you can do is literally just hold the hatchet and keep walking, tracking her movements with your camera, and you just keep walking at her until you get close enough to where the hit is almost guaranteed, or that happens. So fortunately, she's still in a dead zone, so you can just run up to her and bonk. See, you keep saving the one hatchet, which ends up paying off here because you hit her over that pallet. And this is what I'm talking about. You want to force them into doing an action to where you're going to get the hit quite easily. Now, if it were me, because I knew that Nia was self-carrying right over there, she's probably on your totem. So I would have just slugged and then gone after her to push her off. At least give her a whack for her trouble, and then reload and then chase her. I honestly don't know what she's doing. This is a horrible, like, Z-wall. Like, obviously she can run you on the Z-wall infinite, but, you know, that doesn't always work. Fortunately, they got your Ruin and not your Lullaby, because Lullaby at 5 stacks is actually a horrible, huge pain to deal with, even for good players. And at rank 19, you know, you're doing quite a bit of damage to their skill check ability here. So at this point, you're going to be looking for the final person, because they're hooked, and then you've got the other hooked person. And now you're just going to be wandering around to the other generators till you find them. I don't think you would... Oh, there you go. You got some Bitter Murmur value after all. Now, if she was a cognizant player, she would have ran back the other way, but fortunately for you, she was not, due to the rank that you're in. Just basically, your job at this point is to follow her, get close enough to where you can just throw the hatchet and land a hit no matter what. You appear to... anytime she's in view, you can hit. That's not true, because it takes so long for you to pull out a hatchet that there's most likely no way to even catch up to her like that. See, that was actually a really good attempt at predicting, but it didn't really pay off because you threw a little bit high. If you'd thrown low, I think it would have actually hit her. But that's just an experience thing with Huntress. I can't claim to have that experience because I am absolutely not a Huntress main, but it was a good predictive action either way. Now, unfortunately for you, she runs around this way and gets the hatch, just due to luck, I suppose. But all in all, a pretty good game. A lot of mistakes with just pulling out hatchets at random times and throwing them one after another. And yeah, as you can see, we've got 16, 19, 14, 15, 19. So, yeah, you spend a lot of time throwing hatchets, like right at this beginning part where you're just kind of chucking hatchets over and over until you get a hit, you know? Like, none of these hits are going to fly. If you want to really dominate, even like down to the green and purple ranks, you just get close to people and throw a hatchet, and then like once you get to a pallet, you either decide you're going to run through it and get a mouse 1, or you pull out a hatchet and it turns into a 50-50 flip between every pallet loop becomes a 50-50 split between whether or not you're going to just hit them with the hatchet because they've thrown the pallet, or you run through it and they hit you at the pallet, or they keep running when you pull out and you miss because there's nobody there. Yeah, so it basically turns it into a 50-50 split. Otherwise, they're just running to dead zones, and then you walk up to them and you hit them with a close range hatchet. They run a little bit, and then you can mouse 1 them right away. It's, you know, that good old 1-2 combo. But yeah, so like I said, as for your perks, the only thing I would be able to recommend here is like barbecue and chili, but if you don't have it, then Bitter Murmur does just fine. Your build is just okay. Your add-ons, I think you have an exhaustion add-on here, and then a haft. These are perfectly fine. I mean, honestly, you don't really need add-ons to play Huntress, even at a high level. You know, much less a low one. But yeah, I think Huntress's Lullaby really carried, and then Ruin did a pretty good job in the early game. And you didn't really get a whole lot of use out of Bitter Murmur but till the end, and then Nurses gave you maybe 1 aura, maybe because it was low level. If it was a higher level, it'd be a bit of a different story. But I think, you know, you could probably change that out for just about anything else. Even something like Enduring or Brutal Strength might be better than a level 1 Nurse's Calling. So, yeah, that'll about wrap that up. If you guys want your gameplay to be reviewed, send me an email. I'll post that in the description below, or DM me on Discord. I'll post a link to that as well. And if you like what I'm doing, give me a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.